We have a new colorless legendary commander option, and this one is actually rather interesting. Zhulodok Void Gorger something. It is a 6 mana, 1 colorless, Eldrazi colorless, and 5 generic. 7/4. Colorless spells you cast from your hand with mana value 7 or greater have Cascade. So it's a value engine. Whenever you cast something really expensive, have to be colorless like an artifact or an Eldrazi spell, you get to Cascade. So when you cast your All Is Dust for 7 mana, not only do you get rid of all of your opponent's colorful stuff, but you also get some value from it, like you get to cascade into 2 things on a lower CMC of 6 or down. Not of This World have always been one of my favorite colorless spells, because it's once again 7 mana, but we actually don't need to pay any mana for it. Not of This World costs 7 less to cast if it targets a spell or ability that if that creature controller has a power 7 or greater. And our commander do have a power of 7 or greater. So this is like 0 mana if someone targets your commander to protect your commander, and then you can skate into more value. Now this commander is rather expensive, 6 mana is actually quite a lot, and you have to play a lot of 7 cost cards, or a lot of cards with 7 mana or more inside your deck to trigger the value. But that's not really a problem, because Magic have been giving us a lot of cards that actually produce a lot of colorless mana. Mana Crypt, Mana Vault, Grim Monolith, and then you combine that with a Manifold Key and Voltai Key, and your Mana Vault, Soldering, Grim Monolith are producing a lot of colorless mana for you, quite easily. And your Urza Saga can find your keys for you. We even have Jeweled Lotus to help us get our commander to play faster. But we absolutely have to mention Eldrazi Temple and Eye of Ugin. They're gonna help you out casting your really expensive Eldrazi's easier. By the way, you probably don't know this, Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth actually doesn't have a color identity attached to it. It looks black, and it's supposed to be kinda black, but it doesn't have a color identity to it. It's only making lands into swamps. So if you have Urborg, which you're allowed to actually have inside this colorless deck, your Eye of Ugin will suddenly tap for mana. So now Eye of Ugin more or less produce 3 mana for you. And the green version of Urborg that is making everything a forest, the same thing. So this commander really has a lot of support. It really has a lot of things that is developing forward for this to actually work out, to reach the mana that you need in various different cards. So how good is the outcome? Like, how good is the output? Like, how good is the cascade value here? Well, for cEDH, it's not that good. In competitive commander, this is just too slow, and it doesn't really do that much. There are 2 colorless hate bears that are absolutely amazing inside the cEDH format, and that is Void Winnower and Wandering Archaic, and this is definitely the deck that is gonna auto-include these 2. And they're good, they're great, they are interacting with your opponents here and there. Like Void Winnower is actually really good. They're rather expensive, and that's why people don't play it, but this is a deck that maybe could afford it as it's tweaked to only produce colorless mana. But after this, it's not that much anymore. All Is Dust isn't like that bad, but it's also rather expensive. I guess you could view it like a Cyclonic Rift, same mana. But people are gonna keep their artifacts, and people are playing a lot of artifacts in these days. We do have Chalice of the Void, that is actually a really good artifact stacks effect that you could play here to improve your interaction against other cEDH decks. You probably put this on 2, 1 or 0. We also have interaction like Relic of Prognetius. People are heavily on the graveyards these days, and this is a great card versus that. Also giving you a card draw. It's like a cantrip. Colors all through and through. Pretty good. We have the colorless Curse Totem. I kinda like it. It is a colorless interaction stacks piece, but people have been moving away from creature activations. It is doing something here and there, but it's a little bit of a limit. We could play Dampening Sphere. That is a great stacks piece in the current format. Like, that's really good versus your opponents. A lot of opponents usually wanna cast a lot of spells on the same turn to storm off in the form of Win Attempt. However, this is also hurting us. Like, when you cascade, first you cast the pay for the big thing you wanna cast, but then you have to pay 1 mana for the first cascade hit, and then 2 mana for the second cascade hit. So that's hurting you. It is something you could add inside your deck, and I think you should add this inside your deck if you're playing against other cEDH decks, because that is something you could afford, technically. Trine Sphere, another great example. This is a great stacks piece currently, however, it's also going to hurt us. You have to pay 3 mana minimum for the first cascade and 3 mana more for the second cascade, so it's gonna hurt your game plan, but it's something you could afford, so it's a discussion you should have with yourself if you're gonna include this, but like, you might really need this. And then Sphere of the Resistance, the same thing, something you should have a discussion with yourself about if you're going to include. So the ability to interact in cEDH pods exists, like he can interact here and there with his colorless stacks effects and some other things, but it's limited compared to other colors. Like currently the blue is containing counterspells, white is containing hate bears, and other colors have some other interactions that are really good too. Colorless have some, but they are limited, not that many, not enough. But how about the win con? Winning the game. Colorless is lacking in that too, sadly. However, there is a very possible win con with just stomping your opponents to death. Like Void Venor is an 11-9, your commander is a 7-4, so your commander will 3-shot opponents, and Wandering Archaic is a 4-4. And other Eldrazi's that we could have inside the deck are also pretty big. Like I personally like Oblivion Sour, that's usually a ritual sometimes. You exile things, and if you exile someone's entire set of lands, that sometimes, like for example, a person could be discarding a lot of lands, and you exile all graveyards with a Relic of Prognetius, and then boom, a lot of lands are in the exile, and you cast this, you gain all of those lands, and you basically generated mana by casting this. It's also a 5-8, so it punch pretty decent. We also have Thought-Knot Seer, that's a 4-4, but also this has interaction. When Thought-Knot Seer enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals his or her hand, you choose a non-land card from it and exile that card. When Thought-Knot Seer leaves the battlefield, target opponent draws a card. You can target different opponents, so you can target someone that is like the threat, and then target someone for the card draw when this thing disappears, if it disappears, to have that player draw a card. Someone who's like behind. But it also punch pretty good. Lodestone Golem is a 5-3 for 4 mana that punch hard, but also non-artifact spells cost 1 more to cast, so that's both like interaction and a little bit to the punching power to win the game by beatdown. In the end though, winning with beatdown is not that effective. It can happen, but it usually takes a lot of time to get there, and opponents usually squeeze through and somehow win the game usually before that. And also, if you're gonna look at like the beatdown power and compare that to other cEDH decks, this isn't really doing the same. Like, there are much better stacks decks that are interacting with the board state easier than this, and much better at like finishing the game by just punching people out of the game. But what about other power levels? What about a casual? In casual, this is probably gonna be amazing, because the metagame of casual is who can Eldrazi hardest? And the answer to that is Gollus. Pretty straight up, Gollus. Best Eldrazi powerhouse ever. If you have a really high amount of really expensive cards inside your deck and you activate Gollus, there's a chance you're gonna put some Eldrazi's into play. And the trick is to just get your Eldrazi's into play and then give them haste and start attacking with an Annihilator and win the game from there. Yeah, Gollus is pretty amazing, absolutely the best thing of putting big Eldrazi's into play. But this guy isn't that bad either. Or, well, when you compare him to other decks inside casual that can put big, colorless, stompy Eldrazi's into play with Annihilator and give them haste in various ways, then you have a lot of really good options in casual too. But this one actually will work. You call something like It That Betrays, and you cascade into all its dust. You can actually do this. It That Betrays have a 12 mana cost, so that's lower with the 7 for the all its dust, so it will work. And now everyone each player sacrifice all colored permanents he or she controls, and It That Betrays, whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent, put that card onto the battlefield under your control. Nice. That's pretty good, not gonna lie. Like, that is the dream with this deck basically. And in general it's going to work. Like, when you're playing casual Eldrazi, you're gonna have a lot of cards on a really high CMC cost, like usually above 7, somewhere around 8, 9, and then you can cascade into the 7 casting cost things too, and produce a lot of really expensive value. You will of course cascade into some of your mana rocks as well, but further down the line, you're eventually gonna produce a lot of really big Eldrazi's, swing with Annihilator, and win eventually, in the typical casual way as just having the biggest creature on the board state. And Annihilator is usually a really good way to get rid of your opponents in casual because they're just losing too much value. You're out. Like, casual can be really described like value, and Eldrazi's are really good at outvaluing your opponents. Because Annihilator is a busted mechanic. Whenever this creature attacks, defending players sacrifice 2 permanents. Aye. And that is a great way to just hurt your opponents really well while producing a lot of value for yourself. So as a finalized review, not that good for cEDH, but probably really strong in casual. I should say that there's like this thing that sometimes casual don't actually accept that Annihilator exists. Like, that's something you don't do. It kind of depends on the pod. Like, casual is a very social constructed format where you have to talk and have a discussion about what kind of game you kind of want to have. And Annihilator always doesn't really fit that description, what people like and want to have. But it's a great card draw engine in the command zone for colorless in the end. He has a lot of cards to actually make him get into play, and being able to cast really expensive colorless spells. In casual, it will be able to power out some enormous value really efficiently, but in cEDH, that value isn't that impressive. Other decks are just doing a lot more cooler things faster, and other colors are just better at interacting in general. So he's not really gonna work there, but he's definitely gonna see some play in casual. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Wizards of the Coast have been printing a lot of new cards, so we're gonna have a lot of more card reviews coming up. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, guys!